And thank you.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, June 21st. Happy solstice to everyone. Happy 50th anniversary to the solstice parade. It's 137 days till the November 5th election, but only 94 days before they begin voting in South Dakota. 6 days till next week's make or break big presidential debate between President Biden and the other guy. And I have found a brand new website to torture myself about this. 538 has a calculation of all the polls and other things that they update every 12 hours. As of this morning, Biden wins 50 times out of 100. Trump wins 49 times out of 100. And one time out of 100, it goes to the House of Representatives, where, of course, Trump will win. So book those tickets to Portugal, Argentina, or New Zealand, wherever you plan to go, as authoritarian is on the march. We are joined, as usual, by our all-star panel of top local journalists. Lily Karofsky, a freelance journalist, joins us. Melinda Burns, freelance investigative reporter. Josh Molina, man of many hats. And Gwyn Lurie, president, CEO of Montecito Media, as well as editor-in-chief of the Montecito Journal. Thank you all for being here. Lily, I want to start with you because you caused quite a buzz around town with a piece that appeared first in Newsmakers, but also in Ed Had and in The Independent, about your coverage and experience of the attempted building takeover out at UCSB. Before we start, say just a word about your background, Lily. You're still a journalist, a student, I think, out at UCSB. Where'd you come from?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm originally from Boston, Massachusetts. Born there, grew up there. I moved out here about 2 years ago and started going to Santa Barbara City College. I just graduated there about a month ago, and I'm set to start attending UCSB in the fall.
Nice. Okay. And since last October 7th, when the savage Hamas attack on Israel occurred, you've been very involved with events on campus there, which obviously led to your piece, but talk a little bit about what that's been like.
Yeah, for sure. So, I'm Jewish. I was never raised super religiously, but it was definitely very important to us culturally and community-wise. And when October 7th happened, I think Jews began to become so ostracized on campuses so quickly. And I very quickly realized, like, I need a Jewish community or I'm going to kind of get washed away with the tide a little bit. So I started going to Hillel through UCSB. SBCC doesn't have its own Hillel, but it's Santa Barbara's Hillel. Everyone's welcome there, and it's really a fantastic community. So I got super involved with them, and obviously it's a weird time to get involved with a new community because we were all grieving and trying to adapt to this new life. A lot of us, myself included, have a lot of family in Israel, so it was a constant, daily battle of dealing with what's happening on campus, and then also texting my cousins 12 hours a day, making sure they're alive and safe. And I think that it's such a hot button topic right now. Everyone's going to have an opinion, everyone's going to have a voice, and that's fine. I think that a lot of people on campus don't realize that some of us are genuinely being affected by this issue. And I think a lot of the contention on campus really comes from just a lack of information.
Yeah, but it seems like the overwhelming sentiment on campus has been what I would say anti-Israel in terms of how Netanyahu has conducted the war. And of course, we've had the encampment there for, I guess, several months now. And then more recently, a couple of protesters tried to take over a building, and that's what you wrote about. And the tack you took on your piece, and it was obviously an opinion piece, first
Absolutely.
person, was the tension and the conflict, internal conflict that you felt as a Jew and as a journalist trying to cover this event. So Talk a little bit about that piece and your experience writing it.
Sure. So, you know, like you said, the encampment has been up for months at this point, and none of us really had issue with it. I mean, personal opinions aside, the encampment, it really wasn't causing any trouble, and everyone has the right to peacefully protest. That's what a lot of our country is built on. However, when you go out of your way to harass Jewish students as they walk by, that's not peacefully protesting. That's anti-Semitism. And I think they are playing jump rope with that line like crazy. And, you know, UCSB is being sued right now by Tessa Wexler for anti-Semitism because they have allowed her to be
The president of AS, who's also
the student body president. You know, she's being personally attacked and threatened for months because she's Jewish and because she's a Zionist and because she stands up for that. So it's a hard line to walk because, you know, we say that's not okay. They say we're protesting. We say you're being anti-Semitic. They say they're being anti-Zionist. That's a really blurry line right now as well. So, you know, it's confusing, but you know, when they decided, you know, let's go take over a building and interrupt finals week, things on campus escalated really quickly. And yeah, I caught wind of it. All of us at Hillel were just in one big group chat because it's the most effective way to get word to everyone if something's happening. And someone texted photos of what had happened Monday morning when they, you know, busted into the building and threatened the janitorial staff into leaving and broke desks and put fake blood everywhere and just, you know, massacred the place. And I was under the impression at the time, we all were, that this was like its own like separate event. And then they had like gone back to the encampment or whatever it is they do all day. And I showed up to take photos because I knew I wanted to write a piece on it, to write an article about it. But when I showed up, and I'm thankful I wasn't alone, I was going to go alone. And my friend was like, I'm going to go with you, you know, just in case. I showed up and then saw what was really happening, which was that they were working on barricading all the doors and they were still on the building and fully masked and just, I mean, it had been taken over. And at that point, it really clicked in my brain of like, oh, this is different. This is not just another act of protest. This is super threatening and aggressive. And it changed, I think, how the Jewish community reacted very quickly because it immediately felt very threatening to us. You know, they were certainly treating us differently than they were treating other students that walked by. So that in itself is a clear act of anti-Semitism. And yeah, so that got kind of crazy. That was a long first night. I think I was there Monday until like midnight-ish. That first night also involved a quick interaction with the police because my friend was hit in the eyes with a laser pointer and they were like following us with cameras and yelling at us and shining lights on us. It got really aggressive really quickly. And he decided he wanted to file a police report. We went through that protocol. And then I was basically there all day Tuesday, just kind of waiting for something to happen. We found out at that point that the regents were meeting, which is like a big deal because they're like the big bosses for the schools. And I kind of got a tip from a community member who's involved with all that side of the school, you know, like, can't tell you exactly what's happening, but like everything's going to be okay. Just give it a few hours. And I was told I couldn't ask more questions. I didn't know what that meant. So I just waited because I was like, something's going to happen. And then at about 11:15, the group chat started going crazy. People saw police cars, you know, in lines heading towards UCSB, and we figured out really quickly what was happening. So I went back to campus and just kind of waited, and the police moved in at around 1:30. And yeah, very, very crazy night.
Yeah, and then some hours after that, just in the interest of full disclosure, you were a journalism student of Josh's at City College, and Josh told me what you were out there doing, and we connected, and that's how the piece came about. Josh, just as a journalistic matter, and Gwyn, I want to ask you this too. What did you think about Lily's piece, and also, you know, kind of me publishing it? You know, it was obviously a first person and strongly opinionated piece.
Well, Lily in J101 was like the light of the class. So good, such a talented journalist. And I wanted to, when she told me she was there and writing about this, kind of support that because she's a very good journalist. And I actually suggested maybe you should do it first person because you have strong views on this, and it's better as an essay with strong reporting than it is as a neutral objective. And plus, I don't think I'd want to put her in that position to be like, be objective about this thing that you experience every day on college campus, So I thought it was great. I thought it was brave that she did it. I thought that she wrote it very well reported. She had some incredible photos. I think that your decision to publish it was great, Jerry, because it allows a real on the ground visual of what somebody is experiencing, and I think we need that now. Me, Josh, I don't necessarily agree with everything that the perspective Lily has, but it doesn't matter. Like I always go back to the journalism. We're journalists. We're supposed to be presenting all sides and all the information. And Lily's side is a Jewish student experiencing what she perceives as anti-Semitism on a college campus is absolutely her experience and valid. And to learn more about that is 100% like important and necessary. I know when I shared it on my social media, I got some pushback from some of my peers, who follow me because I've shared some stuff about what's happening in Palestine, in Gaza. I've shared videos of children who are starving, the bombs, the maps. Like I've shared that, and I've actually said, like we need to have a ceasefire, and so there's this reputation that I have on my social media. But my attitude on this is that these are complex things and we can have many perspectives. We don't have to just like believe one thing. And our problem in our culture is I think that we judge somebody who has a viewpoint on something instead of hearing it and just existing with it, right?
Yeah.
You can agree with it or not agree with it. And so I thought that was the power of Lily's
Can I say
piece.
something
Yeah,
here?
jump in, Melinda.
Hold on, I thought that was the power of Lily's piece,
I
which was just the
I was
portrait of her experience. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Melinda. Uh-oh, Melinda's frozen. Oh, gee. Melinda, you
okay.
there?
You just
There you are.
yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I was dismayed to see the riot police on the campus. Frankly, shades of the Vietnam era in which I was a participant in protest.
Melinda's gonna try to get her wireless fixed there.
It was really bad situations, Bank of America burning, etc. And I just wondered why there was a really intense effort on the part of the Yang administration to start a real serious dialogue with students. I mean, we have a slaughter occurring now in Gaza, and the world is in protest. This is a worldwide movement. And I think the UC system has botched this at different campuses where, they're arresting students and they brought in police, or they haven't brought in police to protect students who are protesting. And, I was glad to see for so long that the encampment at UCSB was allowed to peacefully continue there. And I just think that there could have been more of an effort.
Yeah. Gwyn, Henry Yang is not looking. I mean, I guess you could argue it either way. At least it wasn't UCLA, the way that he handled it. But nonetheless, he's, the famous line about Henry is he's got his hands on everything, his fingerprints on nothing, because he tries to like sort of avoid accountability, or at least the perspective of accountability. What's been your take on how that's been handled?
I think it's been handled horribly. Melinda and I do not agree. And I think that the universities around this country have failed the students. They failed teaching them all sides of this issue and what's really going on in the world. And I think that anyone who studies this knows that this did not start from the students. If you go to the encampments around this country, they're all the same color tent. They're all the same tent. They're being provided by outside agitators. This is not a movement like the anti-apartheid movement of the 80s or the Vietnam War of the 60s. And look, I hate what's going on in Gaza. I absolutely hate it. But I feel like Henry Yang, in my very strong opinion, with all due respect, is not the leadership this university needs at this time. And this is not just about students. And I'm hoping to do an interview, and I've been in contact with Tessa Wexler because I'd like to know how she feels. I find it interesting that people are referred to as a Zionist, because a Zionist, it's really just a country's right to exist. And no other country in the world has a word like that. You're not a Francist or a Francoist because you believe that France has a right to exist. And just as the daughter of a Holocaust survivor, you know, I look at all this and I think war is a horrible thing. I think the way Israel's handled this is horrible. But I think many things can be true at once. And I think this is a deeply complicated issue. And my last thing I just want to say is, like, whoever said that people need to agree on everything to work together and to find compromise? And I don't know where that came from. I look around the country, even we were talking about women's issues, Jerry, in the last show. And like, you know, these organizations are like are literally sinking under the weight of these conversations about whether it should be someone should be referred to as a woman or a person, and they're not getting to the issue of reproductive rights. It's like no one can have a conversation with someone who feels a little bit differently than them. So back to your original question, I think Lily's piece was a really interesting first-person piece, and I thought that the transparency that she has a horse in this race. I think, you know, Josh, your advice for her to write it as a first-person essay was right, because she does have a horse in this race, and she was very clear about that. And I would like to see perspectives on all sides, you know, what all the students are feeling, because I think it's really important. And the final thing I want to say is, you know, if you look back on the whole DEI movement, one of the big things was it has been like really pushing back against microaggressions, right? So if there was a microaggression against someone, I can say, look, I didn't mean it that way. And what the world would say is, you didn't mean it that way, but that's how I felt it. And so that was a microaggression. But you can look at a student and say, you're a genocidal Zionist, you know, from the river to the sea, blah, blah, blah. And somehow suddenly it doesn't seem to matter what the person's intentions were. And you know, we're not allowed to feel that as a micro, or in some cases a macroaggression.
Yeah.
So it's like, I just think the whole thing, I think the universities have failed. I think they have with great leadership, this should be a place where they're teaching students how to have difficult conversations, maybe even coming up with interesting peace solutions. You know, it's like, but that's not happening. And I do feel like a lot of the language is misguided, even though I believe the sentiment against war and watching innocent people die is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we gotta close on this, but let me ask you, Lily, real quick. What's next? What, the encampment's still there? What's you expecting over the summer, into the fall?
Yeah, you know, I was never expecting the encampment to get shut down, nor was that my hope, honestly. If they're peaceful for the most part, you know, it's tough, and I won't go too far into it because I know we have to move on, but I very much agree with Gwen, and I think that the microaggressions, you know, I get near the encampment and I'm called a dirty Zionist, and that feels a lot like being called a dirty Jew, and that's not okay. That's not okay. And the way Jews are being treated on campuses are not okay, regardless of what's happening hundreds of thousands of miles away. No one's excusing that. It's awful. It's a war. It's terrible. And both can be true. At the same time, it's, to quote Tessa Vexler, it's a two-front war. We're fighting a war on college campuses for Jews to be safe, and we're fighting a war in Gaza and in Israel. And of course, they're very correlated. But the bottom line is that making Jews feel unsafe on college campuses is not going to stop what's happening. It's not going to stop it. And I know people are mad and angry, but it's not going to stop it. And everyone deserves to feel safe when they go to school, regardless of their belief or their religion. And that feels like something everyone knows to be true, but it feels like the kids in the encampment, they say they're fighting for minorities, but you have to be the right kind of minority for them to fight for you. I would argue Jews are 100% minorities right now.
And well, and one other thing, Jerry, I'm sorry, this is just
Real
obviously
quick.
touched a nerve, but you know, I do think unless you're a Jew, and especially a Jew who has family who was killed by a genocide, it's very hard to understand how it feels to live in this world of rising anti-Semitism, just like you can't tell a Black person how it feels to live in this country and walk into a room and be treated differently. It's like, I'm not equating the two, they're different, but they're both valid feelings that you can't, it's hard to walk in someone else's shoes. So I think it's easy to say these people have a right to do this, but I know kids at UCLA who have opted out for a quarter because they're really scared to go onto campus. And that is not a fair way to, you know, go through your college experience, in my opinion.
No,
right.
I agree. It's not fair at all. It's not fair to any of us.
All right. Melinda, you and I are old enough to remember when the police came into University Hall and beat up a bunch of people. So at least that didn't happen. Be that as it may, your Lord's work reporting on the cannabis industry continued this week. They had a squabble at the Board of Supervisors about changing the form of taxation for the industry. And of course, that was one of the big issues highlighted by the famous grand jury report that brought to light all of the backroom deals that brought this about. But in the end, they failed to change it at all, or at least to put an initiative on the ballot or a ballot measure up for it. Why and what's going to happen next? You there? You're frozen. Oh gosh, I knew this was going to happen. All right, Melinda, you could try to work that out. I'm gonna. There you are. Can we hear you now? Nope, not yet.
You're back.
Melinda,
Can you hear me?
now we can hear you. Now we can't.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, go.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, I guess I better talk really fast.
Go
Can you
ahead.
hear
Yeah,
me
we
now?
hear you. Oh,
Okay, we
You
lost.
should go back to Lily now, more on her story.
we should sell this to the Verizon commercials.
Is this for Verizon? What's the
In trouble again.
We're going to
We
need,
hear you now, Melinda, you're good.
we hear you now,
Go
Melinda.
for it.
my
Okay.
program manager needs to be in here.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm so sorry.
You good? We can see you. We can hear you. You're moving.
Okay, I'm gonna,
I'm so sorry. I can find a chair for you to sit here, but we.
can you go ahead with someone else? in
Yeah,
the
sure.
meeting?
And you know what?
Okay.
This is not exactly a visual program. So if we can only hear you on audio, that's okay too. Hey, Gwyn, I want to ask you real quick. We had another tragic death of a teenager, a Santa Barbara High student, on the train tracks in your jurisdiction over there. Tyler Hayden has some reporting this morning about the attractive nuisance that Union Pacific keeps there. Why does this keep happening?
First, sorry.
Well, I mean, clearly there's not adequate signage and fences keeping kids from crossing the train tracks in the most dangerous places. I'm not exactly sure what happened there. Somebody told me, and I don't want to, I mean, first of all, my heart so goes out to this family. I have not slept for 2 nights just thinking about how they must be feeling. And my daughter knows this kid and knows his girlfriend. And, you know, Santa Barbara's a very small place. The students know each other. And so it's really quite tragic. I think he was wearing noise canceling headphones. That's what I heard from a couple of people. Although I wasn't there. I haven't seen a picture. I don't know for sure, but whatever happened, it's tragic. And I think, you know, both Laura's work in Isla Vista at that cliff site where kids have died and on the train tracks, I think, I mean, too many kids, too many young lives have been lost to these, you know, accidents that seem like they should be able to be preventable. So, you know, I'm not sure, you know,
Well,
and
go ahead.
so, and I remember when this happened, what was it, in 2018 with Connor O'Keefe? It was
2017, yeah.
2017.
Yeah.
So, and so it's, I think everyone's in shock at the moment. But in general, like, don't cross
Is
train.
there something, I mean, but is there something more that could be done that your paper could take on, for example, that just, you know, the Union Pacific getting some security there or
I
something?
mean, I certainly plan to write something, and yes, I think we should all be advocating for that. I hope, and in fact, we should talk to the supervisors. We should talk to, you know, I think something needs to be done. And I can't believe that they wouldn't want to. This isn't a expensive fix, you know.
Well,
But
remind me who's
remind
me who's the supervisor there. I imagine he was out there and all over this from the start.
I'm sure he was, because
We only got one.
I'm not going there. I don't know what our supervisor has done. I know that this has like been a shock to everybody. And I was out there yesterday walking around there just trying to figure out what happened. Like, was there a blind turn? Did he not see it coming? And I just couldn't figure it out. So I think we're going to learn more in the days and months ahead, but it's terrible.
Okay. Just, do you know what, just offhand, who investigates this? The county or the coroner or the National Transportation Safety Board, or do we?
Well, I think all of the above.
Okay.
And certainly, you know, the railway has to, American, they have to investigate this. And I can't believe they don't have lawsuits all the time. You know, so you would think it would be in their best interest to try to avoid these kinds of accidents to the
All right,
extent possible.
Melinda, you set?
Yes.
All right, what happened? Why did they fail to pass a change in or a reform, as some might say, in the way that cannabis is being taxed?
Well, they've been talking about changing the taxes. I would say 4 out of 5 of the supervisors, maybe not so much Steve Lavanino from Santa Maria Valley, for 2 years, because they slowly realized that a lot of some, it's hard to figure out how many growers, especially in the North County, who have outdoor grows and are growing what they call fresh plant that goes into processing for oils and edibles and gummies and stuff, were either not paying any taxes or under-reporting their taxes. For example, selling at lower prices to themselves. And so this became, you know, they became aware of this, and they started talking about changing the system, which is now a 4% for cultivation, 4% tax on
self-reported on
gross sales, self-reported, correct. And so they hired an auditing firm. That auditing firm still has, you know, a lot of work to do. They're finally finishing, I think, the audits of 2 growers, which will be kind of a model for how to do this. They're going to talk about that again at a future meeting, but the audits they contracted out to do these audits. They're extremely complex. You've got to figure out prices of first, you have different products being sold. what is the price? Price is all over the map. And it's really difficult to sort of hone in on this. So then they started talking about a square footage tax, which a lot of counties use. I would say it's about 50-50 in the counties that have cannabis cultivation, for gross sale, tax on gross sales, or tax on square footage. And if you weren't growing, either way, if you're not growing or you're not selling, you're not paying any tax. And then they also realized slowly over time and more recently that about 80% of all the taxes that are paid on cultivation are coming from Carpinteria Valley, the greenhouse growers, because they have a product that sells more at a premium. So this is why they have been talking about this for 2 years. And in the end, it fizzled out. They needed 4 out of 5 votes. Supervisor Lavanino, a definite no. He wasn't at the meeting because of personal commitment. And in the end, both supervisors, Das Williams and Joan Hartman, abstained, and the measure had only the support of supervisors Laura Capps and Bob Nelson. So,
and the problem, I mean, just to back up a second, I mean, the problem is that this great gold mine of revenue that the county was going to have, I mean, it's not appeared. It's costing. I mean, the county's basically breaking even on this deal. It's costing as much to administer and watch enforcement and education as it is bringing in. Correct?
It's close. There was a million, 1.7 million left over this year for actually projected for next year that could be used for deferred maintenance and a new deputy county council. And so, yeah, the taxes, which this past almost finished now fiscal year, were 5.7 million. 1.7 of that goes to administration. And then there's about 3 million that goes to enforcement against illegal operators. Obviously, that's not a problem that the legal growers have caused, but several supervisors at least have said that they would like to break even on the cannabis related costs, which would include the education, the enforcement, and administration.
Why,
and that comes to about 5 million.
What'd you say, Gwen?
Why is that? I was just wondering, why is it good for us to have this industry here for just breaking even on it? If it's all going back into the industry, like how is that of benefit to the community? Do you understand what?
Well, I think a lot of people would ask that question. If you look at the gross receipts tax from the Carpinteria, just take Carpinteria Valley, at a 4%, it's a tax on about 135 million in gross sales. So somebody's making some money from this operation.
Sorry.
It isn't so much the county, and
Right.
And then you have, which was brought up at Tuesday's meeting, the problem of odor. So these, persistent problem of odor, both up north in Buellton and in the Carpinteria Valley, hotspots of it throughout the whole valley. So these problems have not been solved, and they kind of postponed the odor problem at a previous meeting, saying, well, we need to do another study. So that's going to be released at the end of the year. We have a new board coming in, and it's possible that there will be some changes in both of those areas.
Well, I think there's
taxes
going to
and
be
odor.
some changes out of the stance out of the first district anyway.
Can I ask you a question, Jerry?
Real quick,
Real
because I want to
quickly.
get to your housing story.
So, you know, like Doss Williams and others said, this whole reason for this thing was it would kill the black market in the cannabis industry and we would legalize it. And so I want to ask Lily a question here about dispensaries versus black market. And I'm not implying I have no idea and I don't care, you know, but you're probably closer to cannabis users, more of them in totality than I am. Do young people, do college students, did it kill the black market to buy cannabis in your experience? Are college students going to dispensaries? Like what's your take at it from your
Yes, Lily, we want you to speak on perhaps
Sure.
17% of the American population
I
here.
can totally do that. So there's a dispensary right in the middle of IV, and we go there a lot. I'm 21, 22 soon. And honestly, the weed at dispensaries is so much better. And then you're also not, there have been other epidemics, in IV and certainly other college towns of like things being laced with other things, and just you don't want to mess with that. If you're doing drugs, do it safely. That's what's always been preached to me. So I've always personally preferred dispensaries. Most of my friends do too. And for those of us who are under 21, but it's college, we all, know how it works. A lot of the times I'll go buy safe weed for my friends, just because if you're going to smoke, I'd rather we know where it comes from and that it's safe and clean and all of that. So there's definitely still a bit of a black market in IV, but a lot of like it's not that expensive. So a lot of people have just kind of said screw it and started going to dispensaries. It cuts out a weird middleman. No one has to wonder where it's coming from, and same result. So I'm a fan of them.
Okay, all right. And I do want to, highlight Melinda again. I mean, all of these problems, as you point out, have been going on 6 years, going on 7 years now. And you know what? They would have been brushed aside and put under the rug if it wasn't for your reporting and the way that you've just hung on to this like a dog with a bone.
Thank you, Jerry.
Not to use an old cliche. All right, Josh. Hey, I was a little shocked by your housing story this week because it appears we do have a builder's remedy. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and all of a sudden there is a builder's remedy project that's going to be going up on the Riviera, correct?
Yeah, I mean, this project it's been revised a couple of times. It was originally the application was submitted in May 2023 as a builder's remedy project. And this is 2 vacant lots on the lower Riviera, and it's got an ocean view. And if you looked at it, you would think this is where 2 single family houses would be based off of the other houses in the area. And so the proposal is to build apartments there. Initially, it was 30. I think there's a preliminary application that's now in for more units than that.
And you
And
say, I think 34, yeah?
yeah, and they do 20% affordable, but this project has the neighbors set, outraged. I don't know where you live anymore, Melinda. I know I've been to your house back in the day. It was on the Riviera. Maybe you still live there. I don't know if you're hearing about any of this stuff. I think it's kind of near where I recall you living, but
Yes, it is.
yeah. And so we need housing, but of course there's traffic, there's parking, there's all these things. So this is one of those situations where they're going to build a big apartment building in an area with single family homes overlooking the ocean. And it still has to go through some kind of review because it still has to go through a process, but it can only go through 5 different meetings. The city has deemed their application incomplete. So that's their way of stalling and pushing it back.
Well, what is explain again what the builder's remedy means and why it's I guess a threat to the neighbors, huh?
Yeah, so the jurisdictions who did not have their housing element certified during a particular period, these developers could submit to build housing as long as the 20% was affordable under what's known as builder's remedy, which is sort of a 1990 state law that has been obscure up until recently when we've needed more housing and the state has been pressuring the housing industry. So what it does is it limits review by local jurisdictions to basically no design review, just the 5 potential meetings. And if they are able to submit it based off of the rules in place, then the city loses its ability to say yes or no. But the gray area is they can deem it incomplete and like tie it up. And also, neighbors still do have a voice. They do have a say. These developers are from LA, so they're not exactly your local people who know the community.
Yeah. I'll tell you, someday when the history of this whole thing is written, it's going to be, the whole thing has been a scam for the developers run by Scott Wieners and Gavin Newsom, because by my calculation, 20%, it yields 6 affordable units. And, everything else is going to be, the prices are going to be way up, and it's going to be pushing more poor people out of town. All right, we got to get out of here. Gwyn Lurie of the Montecito Journal, thank you so much. Lily Karofsky, thank you, and thank you for your piece. And the other thing I didn't mention, just real quick, the photographs on that were so terrific. And I don't know if you had the same reaction I did of that kid on the roof. I went right back to the 1972 Olympics and the kidnapping of the Israeli weightlifting team, and that picture was just so resonant for me. Melinda Burns, thank you for all you do and your reporting and for staying on this. And of course, Josh Molina. Josh, I understand you're now bringing Trump guys onto your podcast. Our good friend Tom Widrow this week, who has a
we argued. He wants to vote for Trump. I said, how can you vote for Trump knowing everything we know about him? And he says, all of us are imperfect, Josh.
Yeah. And a Poliaja. I like his policies. Yeah. Okay. Enough. All right. Thank you
Josh,
all.
someone once justified it to me by saying sometimes God brings us flawed messengers. And I just thought, wow, what could you not justify with that line?
That's a crazy line to just drop.
All right. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time on Newsmakers.